The crimson jungle of Ziffer 9 was alive with eerie sounds, hissing leaves, distant screeches, and the occasional guttural growl from unseen predators. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, almost like ozone. After a lightning strike, Cade Voss moved carefully through the underbrush, his survival knife gripped tightly. His ship, the Orion's Gamble, had crash-landed on this forsaken planet weeks ago, leaving him stranded with limited supplies and no way to signal for help. He was no stranger to rough terrain, ex-military, turned deep space explorer. But Ziffer 9 was a beast of its own. The jungle seemed to breathe around him, its glowing vines pulsing faintly in the twilight, making it hard to tell what was plant and what was alive. Cade crouched by a bubbling stream, scooping water into his canteen. The cool liquid burned slightly on his tongue, filtered but still laced with alien minerals. It would keep him alive for now. Then he heard it, a low, pained whimper. He tensed. The sound was close. Too close. His instincts screamed at him to ignore it and move on. Survival 101. Injured creatures attract bigger, hungrier things, but something about the sound pulled at him. Slowly, he moved toward the noise, pushing aside a massive bioluminescent fern. His breath caught in his throat. Lying in a shallow ditch was something out of a nightmare or a dream. The creature was massive, at least twice his size, with midnight blue fur that shimmered like a starry sky. Two large, tattered wings lay twisted at its sides, and deep gashes marred its flank, leaking golden ichor that pulsed faintly as if the blood itself was alive. But it was the eyes that struck him the most, piercing violet, filled with a haunting intelligence. It wasn't just an animal, it knew. The creature let out another weak whimper, its body shuddering. Dying, alone, afraid. Cade knew better than to get involved, and yet, before he could stop himself, he was already moving forward. "Damn it," he muttered, dropping to one knee. He pulled a small medkit from his pack and assessed the wounds. Deep lacerations. Burn marks. The edges were too clean, not the work of a wild predator. Something had attacked this thing with precision. The beast flinched when he reached for it, but it didn't snap or growl. It just watched him, waiting, judging. "Relax, big guy," Cade murmured, carefully applying a healing salve. The golden ichor hissed as the medicine made contact, but the beast barely reacted. What the hell was this thing? More importantly, who had done this to it? The jungle was silent now. Too silent. Cade's gut twisted. He wasn't alone out here. Something, or someone, was watching. And if they had hurt this beast, they might be coming back to finish the job. The nights on Ziffer 9 were treacherous. The jungle came alive with shrieks, rustling shadows, and the distant guttural roars of unseen predators. Even the plants seemed to shift, creeping along the forest floor when no one was watching. But Cade wasn't afraid. He had been through worse: wars, shipwrecks, the void of space itself. Yet, as he sat by the flickering firelight, watching the injured beast beside him, he felt a strange, unfamiliar weight pressing on his chest. He cared, and that was dangerous. The creature, Nyx, as Cade had started calling it, lay curled just outside the fire's glow, its midnight blue fur glistening in the dim light. The wounds had started to close, but it was still weak, its breathing slow and deep. Cade chewed on a strip of dried ration, his eyes never leaving Nyx. He had seen intelligence in those violet eyes, understanding. This wasn't just some wild animal. It had been hunted, wounded, and left for dead. By who? And why? Cade tossed a small chunk of dried meat toward Nyx. The beast didn't move at first. Then, with a slow, careful motion, it extended a massive paw, dragging the food closer. It didn't devour it like a starving animal. It inspected. At first, sniffing, testing. Then, and only then, did it eat. Cade smirked. "Picky eater, huh?" Nyx let out a low rumble, Not quite a growl, not quite a purr. Progress. For the next few days, Cade tended to Nyx's wounds, scavenged food, and reinforced his makeshift shelter. Nyx, in turn, watched him, not like an animal observing a predator, more like a soldier studying an ally. At first, it barely tolerated his presence. If Cade got too close, Nyx would let out a low, warning growl. But it never bared its teeth, never lashed out. And then, one evening, something changed. Cade had spent the whole day repairing his distress beacon, trying to send a signal off-world. His fingers were raw, his patience thin. As night fell, he collapsed onto the cool jungle floor, exhausted. That was when he felt it, a heavy warmth pressing against his back. He stiffened. His hand instinctively went to his knife. But he didn't. Need it. Nyx had curled up beside him, its massive body resting just against Cade's. Not aggressive. Not threatening, just there. Cade let out a breath he didn't realize he was holding. "Guess you don't hate me after all," he muttered, a small grin tugging at his lips. Nyx let out a deep, rumbling sigh. For the first time in weeks, Cade slept without fear. By the time the sun rose, their bond was sealed. Nyx followed Cade through the jungle, always keeping pace, always watching. When Cade scavenged for food, Nyx would nudge him toward edible plants, as if guiding him. When a storm rolled in, Nyx stood guard over their shelter, wings spread wide to shield them from the wind and rain. And when the jungle's predators drew too close, Nyx would growl, low, deep, and full of warning. The bond between them was unspoken, but undeniable. Cade wasn't alone anymore, and neither was Nyx. But as he stared up at the sky, where distant stars blinked between the crimson canopy, he knew this fragile peace wouldn't last, because whoever had hurt Nyx was still out there, and they would come back soon. Cade moved through the jungle with Nyx at his side, the massive beast a silent shadow beside him. The undergrowth rustled beneath his boots, the scent of damp earth and alien flora thick in the air. Over the past few days, he had come to rely on Nyx's presence, its keen senses, its quiet strength. The creature moved with a grace that belied its size, effortlessly weaving between twisted roots and glowing ferns. Despite the growing bond between them, Cade's mind was restless. He couldn't shake the feeling that their time here was running out. Whoever had left Nyx wounded in that ditch wasn't just going to forget about it. And if they were still on this planet, Cade had no doubt they were searching. Nyx suddenly froze, its ears twitching. Cade stilled, his fingers tightening around the grip of his knife. A faint sound carried through the jungle, a low, rhythmic hum. Not an animal. Not the wind, machinery. Cade crouched low, signaling for Nyx to stay close as he crept toward the source of the noise. Through the dense foliage, he spotted movement. A sleek black ship hovering just above the jungle floor, its engines humming softly. The craft was unlike any standard model Cade had seen before, sleek and predatory, built for speed. A ramp extended from the ship's belly, and figures in dark, form-fitting armor descended in perfect synchronization. There were 5 of them, each carrying compact energy rifles that pulsed faintly with an eerie blue glow. Their movements were precise, methodical, not scavengers, not mercenaries, military. Cade's stomach clenched. He had no idea who they were, but he knew one thing for certain. They weren't here by accident. Nyx let out a low, barely audible growl. One of the soldiers turned sharply, scanning the jungle with a device attached to his wrist. A second later, his voice crackled through the still air. "The trail ends here. It couldn't have gone far." A woman stepped forward from the group, her presence radiating authority. Unlike the others, she didn't wear a helmet. Her silver hair was braided tightly against her scalp, and her sharp golden eyes swept across the jungle with calculated precision. Cade's breath caught in his throat. He had seen that face before. Baroness Xelara Vael'Dris, a high-ranking noble from the core. Worlds known for her ruthlessness in battle. If she was here, this wasn't just some random hunt. This was personal. She turned to one of the soldiers. "Activate the drones. Sweep the area." Cade swore under his breath. If they released scouting drones, it was only a matter of time before they found him and Nyx. He turned to the beast, keeping his voice low. "We need to move, now." Nyx's violet eyes locked onto his, and for the first time, Cade swore he saw something deeper than just instinct, recognition, understanding. Fear! The beast knew who these people were. Cade didn't wait to ask questions. He motioned for Nyx to follow and slipped back into the undergrowth, careful to stay in the shadows. The hum of approaching drones sent a chill down his spine. As they moved, a thought gnawed at the back of Cade's mind. Nyx wasn't just any creature. It had intelligence, loyalty, and now, a high-ranking baroness hunting it down. What exactly had he saved? And what was Baroness Vael willing to do to get it back? Cade's pulse pounded as he led Nyx deeper into the jungle, his mind racing through possible escape routes. The hum of Baroness Vael's drones grew louder, their sweeping blue lights slicing through the dense foliage. One wrong step, one misplaced breath, and they would be found. Nyx moved with surprising silence despite its size, its wings tucked close to its body. But Cade could feel the tension radiating off the creature. It knew the people hunting it. And it feared them. A burst of static crackled from the soldiers' comms behind them. Movement detected. Grid E7. Cade cursed under his breath. That was too close. They didn't have time to outrun them. Not like this. He scanned the area desperately, his gaze landing on a cluster of twisted, hollow trees. The insides, dark and gnarled like the ribcage of some ancient beast. It was their best bet. Without hesitation, he grabbed Nyx's thick fur and pulled it toward the nearest hollow. The creature hesitated, its massive body tensing. "I know you don't. Trust tight spaces, but trust me now," Cade whispered. Nyx let out a low, uneasy chuff, but obeyed, ducking into the shelter of the gnarled wood. Cade pressed in beside it, wrapping his fingers around the handle of his knife, just in case. Through the gaps in the twisted bark, he saw the soldiers approaching. Their armor gleamed under the eerie glow of the jungle's bioluminescent flora. The drones floated beside them, scanning the area with rhythmic pulses of light. Then Baroness Vael stepped forward, her golden eyes sweeping the jungle with an unnerving calm. "She's close," she murmured. Cade's breath hitched. "She?" His eyes flickered to Nyx, his mind piecing together fragments of understanding. Vael wasn't after some exotic beast. She was after someone. And Nyx, whatever it was that someone. A soldier knelt near the hollow tree, his visor pulsing, with data as he scanned the area. Cade's grip tightened on his knife, ready to strike if he had to. Then, just as quickly, the soldier stood. Negative, no signs of recent movement. Vael exhaled slowly. "She's injured. She won't make it far." Her voice was colder, now laced with something Cade couldn't quite place, regret or something else. With a motion of her hand, the soldiers moved on, their drones sweeping forward, continuing the hunt. Cade didn't move. Not yet. Only when the sounds of the search faded into the distance did he let out a quiet breath. Beside him, Nyx shuddered, its body trembling slightly. Cade placed a cautious hand on its fur, speaking softly. "You're not just some lost creature, are you?" Nyx slowly turned its head, meeting his gaze. And for the first time, it wasn't just animal intelligence staring back at him. It was something more. Someone. Cade's stomach twisted. He had rescued an injured beast, but now he was beginning to realize he had rescued a fugitive. Cade's breath was slow and measured as he studied Nyx, the weight of realization settling over him like a storm cloud. This wasn't just a rare alien creature with intelligence. This was someone Baroness Vael desperately wanted back. Nyx held his gaze, violet eyes shimmering in the dim light filtering through the twisted tree bark. There was something almost human in those eyes. A silent plea. "What are you?" Cade whispered. Nyx shifted slightly, its body still tense from the close encounter. Then slowly, its form began to change. The thick fur rippled like liquid shadow. Muscles retracted and reshaped, bones shifting with a muted crackling sound. Wings folded inward, melting into the form of slender arms. Claws retracted, fingers elongating. The deep rumble of breath softened, replaced by something lighter, something undeniably human. A moment later, where the beast had once crouched, a woman now knelt before him. Cade's pulse pounded in his ears. He barely registered the way the bioluminescent plants around them pulsed in response to the transformation, casting eerie streaks of blue light across her dark skin. Her long hair, the same deep midnight hue as her fur, tumbled over her shoulders. The golden markings across her collarbones and arms pulsed faintly, the same shade as the piercing violet of her eyes. She looked up at him, her expression a mixture of exhaustion and defiance. "My name is Nyx," she said, her voice smooth yet edged with wariness. "And you just made yourself an enemy of the Baroness." Cade exhaled sharply, running a hand through his hair. "Fantastic. That's exactly what I needed." Nyx's lips quirked slightly, almost a smirk, but the exhaustion in her body was evident. She was still weak, still healing. He crouched beside her, keeping his voice low. "Tell me the truth. Why is Vael hunting you?" Nyx hesitated, glancing toward the jungle where the soldiers had disappeared. Her fingers curled against her arm, as if remembering old wounds. "I wasn't always this," she murmured. "I was created." Cade's eyebrows shot up. "Created?" Nyx continued, voice tinged with something between pain and anger. "Vael's people engineered me, shaped my DNA, spliced it with ancient forgotten species. I was meant to be a weapon, a pet, something to display in her court." Her jaw tightened. "But I escaped." Cade let out a low whistle, leaning back against the rough bark of the tree. So that was it. Nyx wasn't just a fugitive. She was stolen property in Vael's eyes. "And now she wants her pet back," he muttered bitterly. Nyx flinched slightly at the word, and Cade immediately regretted it. "You're not an animal," he added quickly. "You never were." She studied him, searching his face for deception. When she found none, her shoulders relaxed, if only slightly. "The Baroness doesn't just want me back," she finally admitted. "She wants to erase the mistake of letting me go." Cade frowned. "You mean she's going to kill you?" Nyx nodded. Silence stretched between them. The jungle buzzed with distant life, the faint hum of Vael's search drones, still lurking somewhere beyond the trees. Cade knew he had a choice. He could walk away, leave Nyx to her fate. He had no stake in this fight. Until now, she had just been an injured creature he had helped out of basic decency. But as he looked at her, this being who had been built, enslaved, hunted, and yet still fought to survive, something deep in his gut twisted. He had been a soldier. He had seen people used as weapons, discarded when they were no longer convenient. He had never been able to save them. But maybe this time he could. Cade exhaled through his nose, glancing skyward. "All right, Nyx." He met her gaze, his expression firm. "We're not running anymore." Nyx blinked. "What do you mean?" Cade smirked. "I mean, if the Baroness wants you so badly, let's give her a reason to regret it." Nyx stared at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, a grin tugged at the corners of her lips. Cade could see it now. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was a fight, and they were going to win. The jungle burned. Plumes of black smoke curled into the sky, twisting between the towering trees like ghostly serpents. The air was thick with the scent of scorched vegetation and the sharp tang of ionized energy from weapon fire. In the distance, the Baroness's sleek black ship hovered menacingly, its engines pulsing with an eerie hum as its soldiers advanced through the ruins of their battlefield. Cade's breath was ragged as he pressed his back against a massive charred tree trunk. The heat from a recent explosion still radiated through the air, and his ears rang from the shockwave. Beside him, Nyx crouched low, her violet eyes burning with defiance. No longer just a fugitive, no longer just prey. This time, she was fighting back. A soldier stormed into view, his rifle trained forward. Cade moved first, lunging low and driving his blade into the weak point beneath the man's arm. The soldier barely had time to react before he collapsed, the energy rifle slipping from his grasp. Cade didn't hesitate. He grabbed it, whirled, and fired. A bolt of searing blue light shot across the battlefield, striking another enemy square in the chest. Nyx moved like a phantom, shifting between her humanoid and bestial form in a seamless dance of destruction. One moment she was on all fours, her claws slashing through armor, her fangs glinting in the firelight. The next, she was standing, wielding the very weapons of those who had once hunted her. Together, they cut through the enemy ranks like wildfire. But Cade knew this wasn't over. Not yet. A familiar voice rang out over the chaos, cold and sharp as a blade. Enough. The battlefield fell into eerie silence. Through the smoke and flames, Baroness Xelara Vael'Dris stepped forward. She was pristine, untouched by the battle raging around her. Her silver braid gleamed under the dim light, and her golden eyes burned with something beyond fury, betrayal. "I gave you life," she said, her voice calm but heavy with accusation. "And this is how you repay me?" Nyx stepped forward, standing tall despite the exhaustion weighing on her limbs. "You didn't give me life," she spat. "You tried to own it." Vael exhaled through her nose as if disappointed. "You were my masterpiece, Nyx, a creation beyond any other, a perfect predator, and yet you choose to stand beside him?" She cast a disdainful glance at Cade. Cade rolled his shoulders. "I get that a lot." Nyx didn't take the bait. She kept her eyes locked on Vael, her fingers curling into fists. "I am not your creation. I never was." Vael studied her for a long moment. Then, with a quiet sigh, she drew a slender blade from the sheath at her hip. So be it. And then she attacked. Vael moved with inhuman speed, her blade a blur of silver as she struck. Nyx barely dodged in time, the edge of the weapon grazing her arm, leaving behind a thin, sizzling cut. Cade fired at the Baroness, but she was faster, twisting out of the way with unnatural grace. Nyx met her strike for strike, their movements almost too synchronized. For the first time, Cade saw it. Vael had designed Nyx in her own image. The same speed, the same precision. But Nyx was more than just a copy. She was free. Vael lunged, aiming for Nyx's heart. But Nyx was ready. She shifted in an instant, her body rippling back into its hybrid form. With a snarl, she caught Vael's wrist mid-strike and twisted, hard. The sound of bone snapping echoed through the clearing. Vael gasped, her blade falling from her grasp. Nyx didn't hesitate. She drove her claws into the Baroness's chest, not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to end this. Vael staggered back, clutching the wound, staring at Nyx not with anger, but with something strange, something almost like pride. "You're stronger than I thought," she murmured, blood staining her lips. Nyx stepped closer, her voice steady. "I was always stronger than you thought." For a moment there was only silence. Then Vael let out a quiet laugh, shaking her head. "Then finish it." Nyx hesitated. Cade stepped forward, watching her carefully. He knew this moment mattered. She had fought for her life. for her freedom. But was she going to let herself become what Vael had made her to be? Nyx's claws trembled, and then slowly she pulled back. "I won't become what you wanted me to be," she said softly. Vael exhaled, her body swaying slightly. "Then you are free." And with that, she collapsed. The remaining soldiers, seeing their leader fall, hesitated, then retreated, vanishing into the jungle like shadows. It was over. Cade let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding, turning to Nyx. Her body was shifting again, her beast-like features fading back into her humanoid form. She looked at him, exhaustion and something else, something soft in her gaze. "What now?" she asked. Cade smirked. "Now? We get off this rock." Nyx huffed a small laugh. "And after that?" Cade met her eyes, something warm and certain settling in his chest. "After that, we figure it out. Together."